Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the next episode of the Talk Sports Show on Tuesday, August 15th at 11 o'clock in the morning. On the show today, we are going to go over the NFC South and preview the NFC South, as well as I will be giving you 5 fantasy football players to draft and 5 fantasy football players not to draft / risky picks for your fantasy football drafts coming up this month or at the beginning of next month. But first, here's the show rundown. Oh, we gotta get no. Show rundown. We will preview the NFC South. Preview the NFC. I will give you my preseason NFC South standings and NFC South team previews. Here's my head coaching grades for the NFC South. For the Panthers, I think the Frank Reich hire was an A plus. I like that hire. He's an offensive-minded head coach, and I think he's going to do a lot of good things in Carolina with Bryce Young and their running back, Miles Sanders. Number 2 is Dennis Allen and the Saints. I give them a B minus. He's a good head coach, but he's not offensive minded. He's a defensive minded head coach, and he's not the first choice I would have had for New Orleans, replacing Sean Payton. And number 3 is Todd Bowles. I give the Buccaneers head coach. He's a C minus. He did make a good hire in the offseason, though, by hiring Dave Canales away from the Seahawks. And at number 4, it is Arthur Smith of the Atlanta Falcons. Yes, I'm a Buccaneer fan, as you might know. But my personal opinion, I don't like when the Falcons hired Arthur Smith. He does not know how to utilize tight ends correctly. Perfect example last year. You have Kyle Pitts, who's a unicorn of sorts at tight end, and you're out here barely using him and throwing the ball to Drake London or running it every single play. You don't have a Derrick Henry as your running back. If you did, I would be fine with you running it every play, but you don't have Derrick Henry. Here's my preseason before week 1 NFC South standings. And fourth, finishing in last place in the NFC South, I have the Atlanta Falcons at 5-11. They're on the come up. I think they're going to be good in a couple years. But Desmond Ridder, this is his first full year as the starter. And I like Desmond Ridder, but you need to get him more weapons. I like Drake London. I like Kyle Pitts. I love the fact that they drafted Bijan Robinson in the draft this year. Just a little hint. You may see him when I do my fantasy football advice on guys to draft. At number 3 in the NFC South, I have the Carolina Panthers. Very, very young team, especially with Bryce Young as their quarterback and new head coach Frank Reich. Frank Reich did really good in Indianapolis without the benefit of having a good QB because Andrew Luck had retired. I'm not going to name every quarterback he had in Indy, But all you need to know is he's an offensive genius. He's going to get the best out of Bryce Young. Number 2 in the NFC South, I have New Orleans. I have the Saints at number 2, 9-7. I like the addition of Derek Carr. They traded for Derek Carr, and then I think they extended them right after they traded for him. And I like that. I think that's going to improve their offense a lot. And at number 1 in the NFC South, winning the NFC South for the 3rd year in a row, will be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 10-7, division champs of the NFC South. And I know what everybody's going to say. Alec, they don't have Brady anymore. I don't think it matters. The defense is going to be better than it was last year. And I don't think people are giving enough credit. They haven't named the starting quarterback yet. That's the only negative on the Buccaneers is they have not named a starting quarterback. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers preview. Head coach Todd Bowles. New additions. Trey Palmer via the draft. Dave Canales, offensive coordinator. And quarterback Baker Mayfield. I think Baker Mayfield, if he's a starter, is going to have a very good season. I know I lollygagged him when he was in Cleveland, but if he has a good year, in my personal opinion, he could change his perception that I had on him when he was in Cleveland. If he has a good season this year. New Orleans. Head coach Dennis Allen. New additions, Derek Carr at quarterback and Jamal Williams at running back. And the big key here is Jamal Williams is going to start the first 3 games of the season with Alvin Kamara being suspended. And then Carolina. New head coach Frank Reich. New additions, quarterback Bryce Young and running back Miles Sanders. Bryce Young was drafted number 1 overall by Carolina. And I don't really like the pick, but I'm not a Panthers fan, and I'm also not a GM in the NFL. But personally, I would have gone with CJ Stroud number 1 and not Bryce Young. But again, I'm not an NFL GM. I'm just a fan of the NFL. And my opinion is different than everybody else's. So, with that being said, I think Bryce Young's going to have a good season. And same with Miles Sanders. In Atlanta, at number 4, Arthur Smith is their head coach. And their new additions, Bijan Robinson at running back. You will see him again in the next segment. And now let's get to my 5 guys to draft and my 5 guys not to draft. At number 5 on my guys to draft list is Bears quarterback Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields is going to have a breakout season this year. And I think he's going to do special things this year. They went out and got him a wide receiver 1 in DJ Moore. I like Darnell Mooney. I like Chase Claypool. I love the pick of Tyler Scott later in the draft. I think he's a sleeper that you should take at the end of your draft. At number 4 on my draft for my guys to draft this year for fantasy football is Buccaneers running back Rachaad White. He is the number 1 running back this year in Tampa. Bye-bye. Uncle Lenny is out. Rashad White is in as the number one running back. I was going to take him. I had a draft last night, and I was going to take him, but the pick before me sniped him from me and took him. I would take him as your RB3. Say you take a McCaffrey or an Eckler or a Barkley, one of those three guys, and then you take somebody else. Take Rashad White as your third running back, and you can play him in your flex. At number 3 is another running back, Washington Commanders running back, Brian Robinson Jr. He had an okay year last year, but that's because he was coming back from getting shot in the preseason, and he wasn't fully healed, but I've read reports that he's fully healthy, and they're expecting a big season from Brian Robinson. At number 2 on my players to draft list is Saints second-year wide receiver Chris Olave. Yes, this is a little bit of my Buckeye bias coming out, but I think Chris Olave is in for a special season, especially with Michael Thomas coming back, which means all the coverage is going to go over to Michael Thomas. But one little teaser here. Michael Thomas may be on the next segment that I have written down. But back to Olave. I think he's going to have a big season. He's going to break out this year. And at number 1, I told you to look for this when I was doing my NFC South preview. My number 1 player to draft this year, if you have the opportunity, is Bijan Robinson from the Falcons. He will be the number 1 running back for the Falcons. I don't care what they say about Cordell Patterson or Tyler Algier. It will be Bijan. And they're going to use him in many different ways. Not just as a running back. They're going to use him as a wide receiver. And now, on to the list that nobody wants to see. Nobody wants to hear. The 5 guys that I have to not draft this year. Number 5, Travis Etienne of the Jacksonville Jaguars. The reason he's on the list is because they did draft Tank Bigsby. And I think Tank Bigsby is going to play a significant role in this offense. Etienne he's a risky pick, but if you have the chance, I would still draft him. Just be wary of Tank Bigsby. Number 4 is Michael Thomas. I talked about his teammate in the previous segment, Chris Olave, how I think he's going to break out. The issue I have with Michael Thomas and why I have him on my do not draft list is injuries. He's only played 6 games the last 3 years due to injuries. At number 3 on my do not draft list is Dameon Pierce, running back from Houston. And the reason I say do not draft Dameon Pierce unless you desperately need to is because they signed Devin Singletary. And I think Devin Singletary is going to steal some carries from Dameon Pierce. At number 2 on my do not draft list is another running back. They just signed Ezekiel Elliott. The New England Patriots. do not draft Ramondre Stevenson. He's still in store for a big season, but with the addition of Ezekiel Elliott in the running back room, I would say be wary of drafting Ramondre Stevenson, because I think Zeke's going to vulture some of the goal line carries and take a few touchdowns away from Ramondre Stevenson. And at number 1 on my do not draft list for 2023 fantasy football is Kyler Murray quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals. Do not draft, whatever you do not draft Kyler Murray, because he's going to miss the first half of the season due to recovering from an injury he suffered last year. If you want to draft him at the end of your draft and put him on your bench or IR, I would advise against doing that, because you want to have that roster spot available for if somebody pops off during the preseason. For example, Michael Wilson, who I think is going to be the starting slot receiver for the Cardinals. If you have Kyler on your roster, you don't have the flexibility of going out and picking up Michael Wilson or whoever it is. You need that roster flexibility. So if you have to drop somebody, you won't feel bad that you drop somebody that won't come back and hurt you later in the season. And here's my 3 sleepers for fantasy football this year. Number 3, Trey Palmer, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, wide receiver, rookie. I like the Buccaneers, how they picked Trey Palmer, and I think it was the 6th round of the draft. I think he could be a big part of the offense later on in the season, like week 9, 10, 11, 12 onward. Because Russell Gage is probably going to start this season as the slot receiver. But I would take Trey Palmer. My number 2 guy that's a sleeper is Justin Ross from the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs have been raving about the second-year wide receiver from Clemson. They think he could be the new number 1 receiver for the Chiefs this year. And my number 1 sleeper for fantasy football this year is Texans rookie wide receiver Nathaniel Tank Dell. He's another guy. Take him in the double-digit rounds of your draft, and you'll thank me later, because I think he's going to be a big part of their offense. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is memberships and merch. I do offer memberships and merch for my YouTube. The memberships, all you do is you go to my page, and if you're subscribed or not, which you should be subscribed because you don't want to miss the awesome content I put out every day, and the guests I have on the show from time to time, like Sunday. Yes, there will be a stream on Sunday. It's going to be me and my new co-host, one of my new co-hosts, Robbie. We will be giving our preseason top 25 rankings for college football. And we will probably be talking about other topics as well But back to the merch. The merch you can find, it's next to the membership tab. If you're not a member, I would advocate for you, please purchase a membership. I've kept them cheap. The most expensive one is $9.99 a month. I'm trying to be applicant to all my subscribers. The merch, I offer a lot of merch, and I said this in my earlier video. I will be adding new merch to the shop every couple weeks. Yes, you heard that right. Every couple weeks, I will be adding new merch to my merch shop. And thank you. That does it for today's show. I will see y'all back here tomorrow morning for the NFC North preview.